welcome to Millennium News Hour. I am Tanziba Naurin. In today's bulletin, we will present trending news from across the nation and the world. Let's begin with the headlines of the day. Biden pays tribute to victims of California shootings. Sheriff says gunman didn't know Monterey Park dancehall victims. Biden picks Zions as his next White House chief of staff. Body camera footage from Paul Pelosi attack released. FDA moves to ease rules for blood donations from gay men. US charges 3 in plot to kill Iranian-American author in New York City. US military kills senior Islamic State official in Somalia. FDA pulls authorization for AstraZeneca's COVID antibody drug Evusheld. Green comet zooming our way, last visited 50,000 years ago. Smokey Robinson, king of Motown, to release new solo album. Ukrainian presidency says 10 killed in latest Russian shelling. Israel-Gaza fighters trade fire after deadly West Bank raid. North Korea slams US over decision to send tanks to Ukraine. South Korea extends restrictions on travelers from China. Turkey summons Danish envoy over Quran burning protest. India to get 12 cheetahs from South Africa next month. Djokovic tops Paul, faces Tsitsipas in Australian Open final. Brazilians win Australian Open mixed doubles title. Djokovic dad stays away from Australian Open semi-final after posing with Russian flag. And LeBron, Giannis chosen as captains for NBA All-Star Game. Now news in detail. President Joe Biden on Thursday honored 18 people killed in 2 California mass shootings, saying we have to be there with the communities that have been forever scarred by gun violence. Our prayers are with the people of Monterey Park and Half Moon Bay, and after yet another spree of gun violence in America, he said at a Lunar New Year reception at the White House. 11 people were killed at a Southern California ballroom dance hall late Saturday, and 7 others died Monday at 2 mushroom farms in the northern part of the state. Biden said he had spoken with Brandon Say, who was at a second dance hall a few miles from the scene of the tragedy in Monterey Park when the same gunman entered, brandishing his weapon. Say disarmed the gunman, who then fled. He praised Say's courage, calling him a genuine hero. Brandon said he thought he was going to die, but then he thought about the people inside. Biden said, asking the largely Asian American audience to ponder what could have happened had Say fled himself. The shootings were carried out during celebrations of the arrival of the Lunar New Year, one of the most important Asian holidays, and sent fear through Asian American communities already dealing with increased violence directed at them, some of it due to misinformation about the coronavirus. The 72-year-old gunman who sprayed bullets into a Southern California ballroom dance hall, killing 11 people, had no known connection to the victims, and investigators are still trying to determine a motive for the massacre, the Los Angeles County Sheriff said. Before the shooting Saturday night, Hu Can Tran parked a motorcycle just a block away from the ballroom in Monterey Park, which investigators believe he had planned to use as a backup getaway vehicle. Los Angeles County Sheriff Robert Luna said during a news conference Wednesday, hours after police seized the motorcycle. Tran opened fire on a mostly elderly crowd of dancers at the Star Ballroom Dance Studio, killing 11 people and wounding 9 others, police said. The carnage during what should have been joyful Lunar New Year celebrations sent ripples of fear through Asian American communities already dealing with increased hatred and violence directed at them. Some reports said Tran frequented the dance hall and fancied himself as an instructor, but Luna said he hadn't been there in at least 5 years and did not appear to target the victims specifically. We have not been able to establish a connection between the suspect and any of the victims thus far, Luna said. President Joe Biden announced Jeff Zients as his next White House Chief of Staff on Friday, tapping an experienced technocrat who headed his administration's response to the COVID-19 pandemic as Biden prepares for a re-election bid while facing an onslaught of investigations from a newly empowered House Republican majority. Zients succeeds Ron Klain, a longtime fixture in Biden's political orbit who led the White House through its highs, passage of consequential legislation like the massive infrastructure bill and the Democrats' climate, healthcare, and tax law, as well as dozens of judges confirmed in the first 2 years, as well as its laws such as the rocky withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan. The transition is the first major personnel change for an administration that has had minimal turnover at its highest ranks and throughout the cabinet. Police body camera footage from last year's vicious hammer attack on then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband at their San Francisco home was made public Friday. The video, first obtained by NBC News affiliate KNTV, shows police approaching Pelosi's home and then the door being opened with Pelosi standing next to the suspect in the case, David Depop. Both men are holding a hammer. Asked what's going on, Depop says everything's good. Drop the hammer, one of the officers says. No, Depop replies, before quickly wresting it from Pelosi and attacking him with it. The officers immediately tackle Depop and Pelosi is seen lying motionless on the ground. The time between the door being opened and the hammer attack is about 14 seconds. Prosecutors also released Capitol Police security video of the exterior of the home. It shows Depop with several bags, including a large backpack, in a yard outside the Pelosi home. He appears to remove the hammer from the bag. The video then shows him using the hammer to break into the house, repeatedly swinging the hammer in an effort to force his way in through a glass door on the back porch. The evidence was released after a coalition of news organizations, including NBC News, made a motion to the judge presiding over the case against Paul Pelosi's alleged attacker, David Depop, arguing it should be made public. The US is moving to further ease restrictions on blood donations from gay and bisexual men and other groups that typically face higher risks of HIV. The Food and Drug Administration on Friday announced draft guidelines that would do away with the current 3-month abstinence requirement for donations from men who have sex with men. Instead, all potential donors would be screened with a new questionnaire that evaluates their individual risk for HIV based on sexual behavior, recent partners, and other factors. If finalized, many gay and bisexual men in monogamous relationships would be able to donate blood for the first time in decades. It's the latest move by the FDA to broaden donor eligibility, with the potential to boost donations. We feel confident that the safety of the blood supply will be maintained, FDA's Dr. Peter Marks told reporters. Gay rights groups have long opposed blanket restrictions on who can give blood, saying they discriminate against the LGBTQ community. Medical societies, including the American Medical Association, have also said such exclusions are unnecessary given advances in technology to test blood for infectious diseases. The Justice Department has charged 3 men as part of an Iran-backed plot to kill an Iranian-American author and activist who has spoken out against human rights abuses, officials said Friday. The men, Rafat Amirov, 43-year-old of Iran, Polad Omarov, 38-year-old of the Czech Republic and Slovenia, and Khalid Mehdiyev, 24-year-old of Yonkers, New York, were charged with money laundering and murder for hire in a superseding indictment unsealed in federal court in New York. The 3 men were in custody and one was awaiting extradition to the US. Though authorities didn't identify the alleged target by name, the circumstances described in court documents closely resembled those of Masih Alinejad, an Iranian opposition activist and writer in exile in New York City. Medvedev was arrested last year after he was found driving around Masih's Brooklyn neighborhood with a loaded rifle and dozens of rounds of ammunition. Alinejad told the Associated Press at the time that authorities told her the man was looking for her and that a home security video had caught him skulking outside her front door. The government of Iran has previously targeted dissidents around the world, including the victim who opposed the regime's violations of human rights, Attorney General Mary Garland said in announcing the charges. US Special Operations Forces have killed a senior Islamic State group official and 10 other terrorist operatives in remote northern Somalia, the Biden administration announced Thursday. The operation carried out on Wednesday targeted Bilal al-Sudani, a key financial facilitator for the global terrorist organization, in a mountainous cave complex. This action leaves the United States and its partners safer and more secure, and it reflects our steadfast commitment to protecting Americans from the threat of terrorism at home and abroad, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said in a statement. President Joe Biden was briefed last week about the proposed mission, which came together after months of planning. He gave final approval to carry out the operation this week following the recommendation of Austin and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Army General Mark Milley, according to 2 senior Biden administration officials who briefed reporters on the operation on the condition of anonymity. Al-Sudani, who has been on the radar for US intelligence officials for years, played a key role in helping to fund IS operations in Africa as well as the ISIS-K terrorist branch operating in Afghanistan, Austin said. The Food and Drug Administration has withdrawn emergency use authorization for AstraZeneca's COVID-19 antibody cocktail Evusheld, as the treatment is not expected to neutralize the currently dominant XBB.1.5 subvariant of Omicron. The FDA had limited Evusheld's use earlier this month for the same reason, and the agency's Thursday announcement sent US shares of London-based AstraZeneca down 1.31% to $65.75. Omicron subvariant XBB.1.5 has been spreading rapidly in the country since December, and it made up nearly half of all US COVID cases last week, according to government data. The FDA's decision resonates with concerns raised by the European health regulator about the effectiveness of monoclonal antibodies such as Evusheld against newer variants. AstraZeneca said it was informed that the agency will decide about reinstating authorization of Evusheld if the prevalence of resistant variants in the United States decrease to 90% or less on a sustained basis. The drug maker plans to continue to share relevant data with the FDA and other health authorities regarding Evusheld and SARS-CoV-2 variants. A comet is streaking back our way after 50,000 years. The dirty snowball last visited during Neanderthal times, according to NASA. It will come within 26 million miles of Earth Wednesday before speeding away again, unlikely to return for millions of years. So to look up. Contrary to the title of the killer comet movie, Don't Look Up, discovered less than a year ago, this harmless green comet already is visible in the northern night sky with binoculars and small telescopes, and possibly the naked eye in the darkest corners of the northern hemisphere. It's expected to brighten as it draws closer and rises higher over the horizon through the end of January, best seen in the pre-dawn hours. By February 10, it will be near Mars, a good landmark. Sky gazers in the southern hemisphere will have to wait until next month for a glimpse. While plenty of comets have graced the sky over the past year, this one seems probably a little bit bigger and therefore a little bit brighter, and it's coming a little bit closer to the Earth's orbit, said NASA's comet and asteroid tracking guru Paul Kodas. It's been nearly a decade since Smokey Robinson's last album, but new music from the king of Motown is on the horizon. Robinson will release the 9-track album Gasps on April 28. The music legend behind hits like My Girl and The Way You Do the Things You Do announced Friday. Gasps features new songs produced and written by Robinson himself. The former vice president of Motown Records released his last collaborative album 9 years ago, Smokey and Friends, which featured musicians like Elton John, John Legend, Steven Tyler, and Mary J. Blige. The upcoming album's first single, If We Don't Have Each Other, is now available on streaming services. Robinson is a legendary music producer, songwriter, record label executive, and solo musician who has penned over 4,000 songs and been inducted into the Rock and Roll and Songwriters Halls of Fame. The musician has worked with other historic Motown artists like The Temptations, Mary Wells, Brenda Holloway, and Marvin Gaye. Now it's time for global updates. A new barrage of Russian shelling killed at least 10 Ukrainian civilians and wounded 20 others in a day, the office of Ukraine's president said Friday, as the country worked to recover from an earlier wave of Russian missile strikes and drone attacks. Regional officials said towns and villages in the east and in the south that are within reach of the Russian artillery suffered most. 6 people died in the Donetsk region, 2 in Kherson and 2 in the Kharkiv region. A day earlier, missiles and self-propelled drones that Russian forces fired had hit deeper into Ukrainian territory, killing at least 11 people. The bombardments followed announcements by the United States and Germany of plans to ship powerful tanks to help Ukraine defend itself. Other Western countries said they also would share modern tanks from their stockpiles. Moscow has bristled at the move and accused Western nations of entering a new level of confrontation with Russia. Donetsk Governor Pavlo Kirilenko said the Russian military used fiercely burning phosphorus munitions in its shelling of the village of Zhevanivka, about 20 kilometers north of Bakhmut, a city that has become the focus of a grueling standoff in recent months. The shelling also damaged apartment buildings and 2 schools in the nearby town of Volodar, Kirilenko said. Gaza militants fired rockets and Israel carried out airstrikes early Friday as tensions soared following an Israeli raid in the occupied West Bank that killed 9 Palestinians, including at least 7 militants and a 61-year-old woman. It was the deadliest single raid in the territory in over 2 decades. The flare-up in violence poses an early test for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's far-right government and cast a shadow on U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's expected trip to the region next week. Of the 5 rockets fired at Israel, 3 were intercepted, 1 fell in an open area and another fell short inside Gaza, the military said. It said the airstrikes targeted an underground rocket manufacturing site for Hamas as well as militant training areas. The rockets set off air raid sirens in southern Israel, but there were no reports of casualties on either side. Both the Palestinian rockets and Israeli airstrikes seemed limited so as to prevent escalation into a full-blown war. Israel and Hamas have fought 4 wars and several smaller skirmishes since the militant group seized power in Gaza from rival Palestinian forces in 2007. Thursday's deadly raid in the Jenin refugee camp was likely to reverberate on Friday as Palestinians gather for weekly Muslim prayers that are often followed by protests. Hamas had earlier threatened revenge for the raid. North Korea condemned on Friday the decision by the United States to supply Ukraine with advanced battle tanks to help fight off Russia's invasion, saying Washington is escalating a sinister proxy war aimed at destroying Moscow. The comments by the influential sister of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un underscored the country's deepening alignment with Russia over the war in Ukraine as it confronts the United States and its Asian allies over its own growing nuclear weapons and missiles program. North Korea has blamed the United States for the crisis in Ukraine, insisting that the West's hegemonic policy forced Russia to take military action to protect its security interests. It has also used the distraction created by the war to accelerate its own weapons development, test firing more than 70 missiles in 2022 alone, including potentially nuclear-capable weapons believed able to target South Korea and the US mainland. The United States has accused North Korea of sending large supplies of artillery shells and other ammunition to Russia to support its offensive in Ukraine, although the North has repeatedly denied the claim. Kim Yo-jong's comments, carried by the official Korean Central News Agency, came after US President Joe Biden on Wednesday said the United States will send 31 M1 Abrams tanks to Ukraine, reversing months of arguments by Washington that they were too difficult for Ukrainian troops to operate and maintain. The US decision followed Germany's agreement to send 14 Leopard 2A6 tanks from its own stocks. South Korea says it will continue to restrict the entry of short-term travelers from China through the end of February over concerns that the spread of COVID-19 in that country may worsen following the Lunar New Year's holidays. South Korea in early January stopped issuing most short-term visas at its consulates in China, citing concerns about a virus surge in the country that abruptly eased coronavirus restrictions in December and the potential for new mutations. South Korea has also required all passengers from China, Hong Kong, and Macau to submit proofs of negative tests taken with 48 hours before their arrival and put them through tests again once they arrive. The steps, which originally were imposed for the month of January, prompted China to retaliate by suspending South Korean short-term visa applications, raising concerns about disrupted business activities in a country that heavily depends on exports to China. Turkey summoned the Danish ambassador and accused Denmark of endorsing a hate crime after an anti-Islam activist on Friday burned 2 copies of Islam's holy book, the Quran, in a solitary protest in Copenhagen. Rasmus Paludan, a far-right activist who holds both Danish and Swedish citizenship, had already infuriated Turkey by staging a Quran-burning protest in Sweden on January 21. On Friday, he replicated the stunt in front of a mosque, as well as the Turkish embassy in Copenhagen, and vowed to continue every Friday until Sweden is admitted into NATO. Sweden and neighboring Finland are seeking to join the military alliance amid the war in Ukraine, in a historic departure from their non-aligned policies. but their accession requires approval from all NATO members, and Turkey has indicated it will block Sweden's bid, in part due to Paludan's initial stand. Even before that, Ankara was pressing the two countries to crack down on Kurdish militants and other groups it considers terrorists. Turkey's state-run Anadolu agency said the Danish ambassador was summoned to the Turkish Foreign Ministry, where Turkish officials strongly condemned the permission given for this provocative act, which clearly constitutes a hate crime. The ambassador was told that Denmark's attitude is unacceptable and that Turkey expected that the permission be revoked, according to Anadolu. India will receive 12 cheetahs from South Africa next month that will join 8 others it received from Namibia in September as part of an ambitious plan to reintroduce the cats in the country after 70 years. India plans to transport an additional 12 annually for the next 8 to 10 years as part of an agreement signed by the two African countries, India's Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change said Friday. Cheetah populations in most countries are declining. South Africa, where the cats are running out of space, is an exception. South Africa's National Biodiversity Institute, national parks, the Cheetah Range Expansion Project, and the Endangered Wildlife Trust will collaborate with their Indian counterparts, the ministry said in a statement. The 8 cheetahs flown from Namibia in September were released in a sprawling Kuno National Park in central India. Now it's time for business news. New York stock close price is 15,962.58. The NYSE composite is decreased by 23.29 points or 0.15%. Tokyo stock close price is 27,382.56. The Nikkei 225 index is decreased by 19.81 points or 0.07%. Shanghai stock close price is 3,264.8138. The Shanghai Composite Index is increased by 24.53 points or 0.76%. Hong Kong stock close price is 22,688.90. The Hang Seng Index is increased by 112.12 points or 0.54%. Bombay stock close price is 59,330.90. The Sensex index is decreased by 874.16 points or 1.45%. Let's have a look on today's sports stories. Of all of his considerable talents, Novak Djokovic's ability to cast aside whatever appears to stand in his way might be the most valuable. Djokovic simply does not lose semi-finals or finals at Melbourne Park, and so, not surprisingly, he overcame some shaky play in the early going and took over the match, beating Paul 7-5, 6-1, 6-2 to close in on a 10th Australian Open Championship and 22nd Grand Slam title overall. From 5-all in the first set, Djokovic claimed 7 games in a row and 14 of the last 17. He extended his Australian Open winning streak to 27 matches, the longest in the Open era, which dates to 1968. The Brazilian pair of Luisa Stefani and Rafael Matos beat India's Sania Mirza and Rohan Bopanna 7-6, 6-2 on Friday to win the Australian Open mixed doubles title in Mirza's last match at a Grand Slam tournament before she retires. Mirza, who has won 6 Grand Slam doubles championships, 3 in mixed, including the 2009 Australian Open, will retire next month after a tournament in Dubai. Mirza was emotional at the trophy presentation. Disclaimer: if I cry, it is happy tears, Mirza said. I don't want to take away the moment from Matos Stefani, who have deserved this. The 36-year-old Mirza first appeared at a Grand Slam tournament 18 years ago in Melbourne, when she was beaten by eventual 2005 champion Serena Williams in a third-round match. Novak Djokovic's father decided to stay away from the 21-time Grand Slam champions semi-final after getting embroiled in a flap involving spectators who brought banned Russian flags to Melbourne Park, Tennis Australia said Friday. In a release emailed to reporters about 2.5 hours before Djokovic was scheduled to face Tommy Paul for a berth in the men's singles final, tournament organizers said Sergej Djokovic has issued a statement confirming that he will not attend the match. Throughout the event, we have spoken with players and their teams about the importance of not engaging in any activity that causes distress or disruption, Tennis Australia said. LeBron James is closing in on Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's NBA career scoring record, and now he has caught Abdul-Jabbar on another page of the All-Star record book. James was announced Thursday as an NBA All-Star for the 19th time. The Los Angeles Lakers star tying Abdul-Jabbar for the most selections in league history. James, the leading overall vote getter, will be the captain of one of the teams for the February 19 All-Star game in Salt Lake City, while Eastern Conference voting leader Giannis Antetokounmpo of the Milwaukee Bucks will captain the other side. This is the sixth year the NBA has used the captain format for the All-Star game. James has been a captain every time and has never lost, taking a 5-0 record into this year. Antetokounmpo is a captain for the third time after also earning that right in 2019 and 2020. Let's have a look on today's weather forecast. That's all in today's news. Keep watching Millennium News 24 for latest updates. Millennium TV US and Millennium News 24 network is transmitted and available to be watched free for all at TVs such as Sony, Samsung, LG, Roku TV, Amazon TV and Apple TV, and also in all European countries and Australia available with Sky Network, Worldwide Jadoo TV, Radiant IPTV, Worldwide Jago Media Network and Horizon Satellite globally. Stay connected with us for all types of informative and entertainment program. Thank you.